Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. It started with a letter, no stamp, no name, just a demand to hand over my pool to the HOA I didn't even belong to. I laughed. Then they showed up. Then they trespassed. Then they tried to sell my backyard. That's when I stopped laughing and started fighting back. I'd just come back from a quiet hike through the canyon behind my house. Sunset was rolling in. That warm, burnt orange kind of light that makes even the dust on your porch glow like it's something sacred. I had a beer in one hand, towel over my shoulder, and was already picturing myself sinking into the water of my pool. My pool, when I noticed something off in the mailbox. There was a plain white envelope, no stamp, no return address. No name on the front, just to the resident of 3148 Crescent Ridge. My address. It looked like something a teenager would slip in for a prank, but I opened it anyway. Typed, formal, unhinged. The board of the Emerald Ridge Homeowners Association has resolved to use your pool area for our monthly community meetings starting next month. We expect you to provide gate access and any necessary accommodations in advance. Thank you for your cooperation. No signature, just Emerald Ridge HOA board. I blinked, read it again, laughed out loud, thinking maybe it was from one of my buddies screwing with me, but I wasn't laughing 10 seconds later. I could already feel my blood pressure doing cartwheels. See, here's the thing. I'm not a member of Emerald Ridge HOA. Never was. Never will be. My property sits just outside their jurisdiction. That was intentional. I paid good money for land that came with peace, privacy, and no one telling me what color my mailbox should be. It's marked clearly in the plat map and deed, not subject to HOA control. End of story. I figured it was some board member getting ahead of themselves, maybe a miscommunication. Either way, I wasn't giving it another thought. I crumpled the letter and went to do what I was planning, dropped my towel, walked out to the pool, and dove in like it was the only sane thing left in the world. The next morning, I was making coffee when I heard the gate intercom buzz. It's rare anyone shows up unannounced, so I checked the monitor. 3 people, standing just outside the main gate. 2 men in HOA polos, looking like low-budget mall cops, and in front of them, the unmistakable queen of tightly clenched suburbia. A bleach blonde bob, pastel cardigan, clippered, held like a crucifix. Karen. I could smell the lavender hand sanitizer through the camera. I answered through the speaker. "Can I help you?" Karen leaned in with a smile that said, "I'm about to ruin your week with civility." "Mr. Graves, I assume." "We're from the Emerald Ridge HOA board. We're here to discuss coordination for monthly community access to the pool." My jaw tensed. I didn't answer for a second because I honestly thought they had the wrong address. "To my pool?" She nodded like I was the slow one. "Yes, we notified you in writing. You should have received the letter yesterday." "Oh, I received it all right. It's currently lining the bottom of my trash can." "You do realize this property isn't part of the HOA, right?" I asked, calm but firm. She smiled wider, all gums and bad intentions. "That's a common misunderstanding. But the HOA has jurisdiction over visual landscape elements that affect the broader aesthetic of the community. Your pool is highly visible from the road." I let out a short laugh. "You're telling me my pool is a community asset because it's visible from the road?" "Exactly," she said, as if she'd just cited the Constitution. "It contributes to the cohesion of the neighborhood experience. We voted unanimously. It's now considered part of the community visual environment, Jesus Christ." I took a breath. "Let me make this simple. You don't have jurisdiction here. My land is not within your boundaries. My pool is not your meeting hall. And the only way you're getting through those gates is if I open them." "Which I won't." There was a pause. One of the polo guys shifted uncomfortably. Karen, however, didn't budge. She scribbled something onto her clipboard like she was citing me for daring to breathe without a permit. "You'll want to reconsider, Mr. Graves," she said, suddenly steely. "The HOA takes non-cooperation seriously. There are consequences for not respecting community integrity." I smiled, leaned into the intercom, and said, "There are also consequences for trespassing. Goodbye." I cut the feed. 3 minutes later, I watched from the upstairs window as Karen posed in front of my gate, clippered underarm, while one of the men took photos. Then they walked away, not like they'd been rejected, but like they'd just marked a box on some larger to-do list. I stood there for a moment longer, then turned and grabbed the thick folder I keep in my home office. Deed, survey, exclusion documents, aerial maps. My land was outside their reach. That wasn't just a technicality, it was a goddamn wall. And I was about to make damn sure they knew it. But something about that smile Karen gave me, calm, composed, quietly deranged, told me she wasn't done, not even close. 2 days later, I got a letter. This time, it was certified mail, delivered by a very confused-looking USPS guy who apologized for needing a signature. The envelope was thick, legal-grade thick, and stamped with the letterhead of a local law office I didn't recognize. I opened it on the porch with my coffee still in hand. Inside were 4 pages of dense legal language that managed to be both absurd and infuriating. The HOA, through their legal counsel, was now formally claiming that my pool contributes substantially to the visual cohesion of the Emerald Ridge community and therefore must be subject to oversight and cooperative integration. They listed demands: provide monthly access to the pool and surrounding patio area for scheduled meetings. If unwilling, submit architectural redesign plans to construct a compliant privacy barrier. All fencing must meet HOA standards and be approved in advance. Oh, and they also strongly encouraged that I sign a retroactive community participation acknowledgement form, which, if I'm reading between the lines correctly, was an attempt to trick me into legally joining the HOA after the fact. I didn't throw this letter away. I scanned it, emailed it to my attorney, and followed up with a phone call. Doug, my real estate attorney, answered like he'd just rolled out of bed, which he probably had. But once I started reading the letter aloud, his voice snapped into focus. "They're trying to bait you into jurisdiction," he said. "If you respond incorrectly, you could give them a foothold." "Too late for them," I said. "I'm not giving them anything." Doug drafted an official response on my behalf, a cease and desist that cited every relevant statute, plat boundary, zoning map, and grandfathered exclusion clause. It was 5 pages of pure, polished middle finger. We had it couriered to both the law firm and the HOA office the same day. The next morning, I also installed 2 more cameras at my side gates and ordered reinforced padlocks. That pool wasn't just a luxury anymore. It was the front line. That weekend, things got weird. I started noticing HOA board members walking slowly past my property, not on the sidewalk, on my grass. They'd pause, linger, look toward the pool area with all the subtlety of vultures circling a dying animal. A few snapped photos. One guy actually pulled out a laser measure and started aiming it at the corner of my fence like he was auditioning for a role on CSI Suburbia. Then came the pamphlets, glossy, professionally printed, dropped into every mailbox in the neighborhood, including mine. The cover featured a stock photo of smiling kids in a community pool, underlined with the slogan, "Water is a right, not a privilege. How shared resources keep us united." Inside, an entire page was dedicated to visual integration zones, with a heavily edited satellite photo of the neighborhood. My property was outlined in red. The text beneath it read, "Despite residing adjacent to Emerald Ridge, this residence benefits from proximity while declining participation. Should one man block access for all? The ball's on these people." Later that week, my neighbor Martha, a sweet older woman who always used to wave from her rose garden, crossed the street instead of walking past my house. I waved anyway. She looked down and kept moving. The kids who played near my sidewalk left a crushed juice box on my porch. This wasn't just legal posturing anymore. They were trying to isolate me socially, like I was the grumpy old bastard on the block who kicks puppies and steals Halloween candy. I knew that tactic. Basic community psychology. Turn the crowd against the target, make them feel like an outsider until they break. They didn't realize I was the wrong guy for that game. I ordered a high-definition drone camera with infrared capabilities. If they wanted to stare at me, I'd stare back harder. I also reprinted large-scale versions of my land deed and HOA exclusion paperwork, laminated them, and mounted them on my gate in a nice gold frame under the security camera. That weekend, a kid tried to take a selfie in front of it. I gave him a thumbs up from the porch. By Monday, Doug called me with a quiet tone I didn't like. "They're escalating," he said. The HOA attorney submitted a jurisdictional overlap memorandum to the county zoning board. What the hell is that? They're laying the groundwork to request administrative review of your parcel boundaries. If they convince the county your lot was intended to be part of Emerald Ridge and was mistakenly excluded, they could try to retroactively absorb it. My skin went cold. They can't do that, I said. They can try. And if they catch the right bureaucrat on a lazy Friday afternoon, they might get a rubber stamp on the first round before we can challenge it. I didn't say anything. I just looked out the window toward the pool, where a single leaf floated on the still blue surface like a threat. I wasn't up against bored neighbors with too much time on their hands anymore. This was a full-on land grab, dressed up in khakis and polo shirts. It was just after 6 in the morning when I heard the sound of power tools. At first, I thought it was coming from a few houses down, someone installing a deck, maybe. But then the metallic clatter of something being bolted directly into concrete made my stomach sink. I threw on a hoodie, slipped into my boots, and jogged to the side yard. What I saw made me stop in my tracks. There were 4 men on my property. They were unloading aluminum posts, composite benches, and sections of what looked like a shade pergola. One guy was drilling into the concrete next to my pool patio. Another was assembling a long bench beside it, as if preparing for a church picnic. In the middle of them stood Karen in a lilac tracksuit, holding a clipboard and a branded reusable HOA mug, sipping calmly like this was just another day in paradise. I didn't speak right away. I just stared. I think my brain stalled, trying to process the absolute nerve of it. When I finally did speak, it came out like gravel. "What the hell are you doing on my property?" Karen turned toward me with a smile, her voice sugary and casual. "Morning, Mr. Graves. We're just finalizing the community seating area. The HOA board approved the installation last week. This will really bring people together." I blinked. "Bring people together? You broke into my yard." "Your side gate was unlocked," she said, flatly lying through her freshly bleached teeth. "And we have a service agreement. These men are from Pleasant Community Designs, licensed, insured, and very professional. This won't take more than a few hours." I walked over and stood in front of the guy with the drill. "Turn it off." Now he looked at Karen, unsure. "You don't have any legal right to be here," I said to her, louder now. "And whatever contract you're waving around, it sure as hell doesn't have my name on it." Karen gave me a look like I'd just spilled juice on a wedding dress. "Mr. Graves, I'm asking you to lower your voice. There's no need for hostility." "No hostility yet," I said, pulling out my phone. "But you're about to see some trespassing charges in real time." She stepped closer, eyes narrow. "You should know this only makes you look worse. The community will see that you're unreasonable, combative. Save it for the cops." I called the sheriff's office and gave them the short version: trespass, unauthorized construction, potential fraud. Then I took photos of everything: the workers, their tools, their unmarked van, and Karen's clipboard. While we waited, Karen kept walking around the patio, pointing to areas on her floor plan like she was an interior designer staging someone else's Airbnb. By the time the deputy arrived, a young guy named Martinez, I had documents ready: deed, parcel map, the letter from my attorney, and photos of the gated property with clear signage saying private property. Karen tried to spin her version first, of course. "We had an understanding with Mr. Graves. We've sent letters. He's been made aware." "I didn't agree to anything," I cut in. "This is my land. They broke in. That bench right there is bolted into my pool deck. I want this treated as what it is: illegal trespassing and property damage." Martinez looked between us. "Did you sign a service agreement or give any kind of written consent?" Karen's expression didn't flinch, but her pause said everything. "The board voted on behalf of the Visual Community Rights Ordinance." "That's not a thing," I snapped. "And they know it." Martinez finally nodded and started asking the workers to step back while he made some calls. 10 minutes later, he handed Karen a notice of complaint for trespassing and unauthorized construction and warned the workers to pack up. Karen looked at me with a small, smug smile as if she'd just lost a coin toss, not trespassed onto private land. "I hope you understand, Jake," she said as she left. "This is far from over. The board acts with full transparency. The community is watching." I didn't answer her. I just watched as the contractors disassembled the partially installed pergola, muttering to themselves, clearly annoyed they'd been dragged into HOA madness. The next day, a photo of the scene was posted on the Emerald Ridge Facebook group. The caption read, "A setback for community unity, but we remain committed to progress. Obstacles only strengthen resolve." Below it, comments ranged from passive-aggressive to borderline militant. "If someone builds a pool where we all have to look at it, it should be open to all of us. He thinks his money makes him immune. Wait until the county looks into his lot lines. Time to organize a peaceful community gathering. Let's remind him we're neighbors." I realized they weren't going to stop. This wasn't just stubbornness anymore. This was organized siege with a smile. I don't like playing defense, never have. But for weeks, that's exactly what this felt like I was patching holes on a ship while HOA pirates circled the damn thing with torches and umbrellas. The turning point came when I overheard two guys near the gas station talking about the pool guy who won't share. They didn't say my name, but they didn't have to. That story was spreading fast, and I wasn't the one telling it. So I decided to flip the narrative. I called Doug and told him I wanted to host a very special event, something loud, something legal, something public. His silence on the other end lasted long enough for me to worry he'd passed out. But then he said, "You want to weaponize the truth? Let's do it properly." The following Saturday, I hosted the Community Rights and Property Law Transparency Picnic. That's what the flyer said, but internally I called it the HOA exorcism. I had tents set up in the backyard, rented, not HOA approved, just to twist the knife. One was labeled Legal Documentation Station, where Doug laid out laminated versions of my deed, the original plat map, and the very clear HOA boundary lines. We had printed copies for anyone who wanted one. Free. Another tent had a banner. Private property not equal to public goodwill. Let's talk about boundaries. Underneath it, 3 local reporters from small outlets sat with notepads, microphones, and eyes full of caffeine and curiosity. I invited them myself. One even brought a freelance videographer. Apparently, this kind of HOA lunacy makes good Sunday filler content between wildfires and celebrity divorces. Doug gave a short but fiery talk about property rights, quoting case law like a Baptist preacher. The crowd, which started as a polite dozen, doubled in under an hour. Some were neighbors who came out of curiosity. Others were members of nearby HOAs who'd had their own battles. One guy said his HOA fined him for using an unapproved mailbox, and he drove 90 minutes just to attend. We served burgers, soda, and irony. But the highlight came when I unrolled a massive banner across the back fence. "Not in your HOA. Not your damn pool." People laughed. They clapped. Someone started to chant, "Private means private." And for the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't the crazy one in this situation. Of course, Karen showed up. She appeared around 3, marching down the street in a white sun hat and holding a manila folder like it contained the 10 Commandments. She didn't come through the gate. She stood just outside it, flanked by 2 HOA loyalists with folding chairs, and shouted across the lawn, "Mr. Graves, are you seriously using your home to host an anti-community rally?" Doug stepped up to the fence with the calmness of a man who enjoys legal blood sport. "It's a private educational event, ma'am. You're welcome to attend, assuming you don't try to install any unauthorized furniture again." Karen glared at him, then at the reporters who were already filming. One of them approached and asked if she wanted to give a statement. She tried to play dignified, saying things like concerned for harmony, neighborhood standards, and my personal favorite, visual responsibility in shared landscapes. I stood behind her, just out of frame, holding up a cardboard sign that said, "I own this pool. I have the receipts." They used that photo as the header on the Sunday night news blog, but the real payoff came 2 days later. Doug forwarded me an email from a county official, one who'd apparently caught wind of our little gathering. They requested copies of the documents we'd shared. Why? Because it turned out HOA had recently filed a boundary review proposal with the zoning office, and the official had questions. Serious questions. Not only that, but a local property rights nonprofit reached out and offered pro bono litigation support if this situation escalated into a constitutional challenge, and something told me it would. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. Because on the Emerald Ridge Facebook group, a new post went up that evening from a board member named Thomas. "We appreciate everyone who supports peaceful solutions. A few setbacks won't deter us. We have new developments coming soon that will resolve the pool issue permanently. Stay tuned." That wasn't just vague optimism. That was a threat. It started with an email. No subject line. Just one sentence in the body. "You should check what the HOA is telling investors about your pool." At first, I thought it was spam, but the sender's name looked vaguely familiar. Someone from the neighborhood, I think. A tech guy who once helped me fix a router over a beer. I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Doug. He was already 3 coffees deep and cranky by nature, but he perked up the second I read him the message. Pull every real estate transaction and any public investment notices tied to Emerald Ridge HOA from the last 90 days, he said. If they're dumb enough to put this in writing, we'll find it. 2 days later, Doug showed up at my door with a thick manila envelope, a grim smile on his face, and a 6-pack of craft beer. That combination could only mean one thing. Someone had really screwed up. Inside the envelope were documents that made my blood go cold. The HOA, specifically its board of directors, had entered into a non-binding letter of intent with a private real estate investment trust based in Arizona. In this agreement, they described a plan to monetize underutilized shared amenities within the Emerald Ridge community. That would have been laughable if not for the fact that one of those amenities was listed by name as community pool and recreation zone located on lot 112A, pending reintegration. My lot. My goddamn pool. They'd even attached photos from Zillow and satellite images of my property. One of them had a little HOA logo watermark in the corner like they'd branded it. The text claimed the pool area was temporarily inaccessible due to individual dispute, but expected to resolve favorably via administrative review. They weren't just trying to steal it now, they were trying to sell it. Doug had already called it. They were laying the groundwork for retroactive absorption using forged maps and bureaucratic sludge. And now they were feeding this lie to investors as if they already own the place. Jake, Doug said slowly, pointing at the paper, This is fraud. Full stop. If they represented your land as a community asset to investors, they've committed securities fraud, real estate misrepresentation, maybe even RICO. If we can tie it to the whole board, I was quiet for a long minute, just staring at the word amenity. An amenity, like I was a fucking jacuzzi at a Marriott. By evening, we'd already filed an official complaint with the state's Department of Real Estate, then another with the Attorney General's office under the Business and Professions Code. Doug drafted a cease and desist with a notice of impending litigation that we couriered overnight to the investment firm in Arizona just to make sure they knew they were being sold a poisoned chalice. I didn't sleep that night. My head was spinning with questions. How far had they gone? Was Karen behind all of it? Did the rest of the board even know? Or were they all just playing along because they assumed no one would stop them? The next morning, the Emerald Ridge Facebook group exploded. Someone, not me, had leaked the investor documents. The screenshots were all over the page. People were tagging each other, commenting things like, "Wait, how can the HOA sell something they don't own? That's Jake's pool. They're really trying this. I didn't vote for this. Did anyone?" Karen stayed silent. For the first time in weeks, she didn't post a single word. Instead, someone named Greg, a soft-spoken board member who usually just nodded a lot, posted a short statement. These actions were undertaken by certain individuals on the board without full consent. An emergency session will be held to address this. Doug read that and said, "They're getting ready to throw Karen under the bus." "Let 'em," I replied. "But I'm parking the bus myself." By week's end, we had two things working in our favor. First, the investment firm backed out, hard. Their legal team sent a statement saying they were misled regarding asset ownership and had filed a complaint of their own with the county fraud office. Second, a county assessor reached out to us directly. Apparently, someone from the HOA had submitted an updated parcel map. With my lot listed as common use property, it was the smoking gun. A forged map, a fraudulent land claim, and an attempt to financially benefit from it. And I knew exactly whose hands it came from. I looked out at my pool again that night, lights reflecting off the water, so calm you'd think it had no idea there was a war being fought over it. But I did. And now it was my turn to bring the fire. I've always believed in keeping receipts, not just literal ones, though I've got boxes of those, neatly labeled in my office, but digital ones too. Emails, texts, time-stamped documents, server logs. You never know what will matter when someone tries to rewrite the truth. Now, it all mattered. After the fraud with the investor came to light, I had Doug reach out to a buddy of his, a cybersecurity expert named Miles. The kind of guy who says things like digital fingerprint with a straight face and gets visibly excited by metadata. Miles didn't just review the forged parcel map that the HOA submitted. He dissected it. Every document has a trail, and this one was no exception. He examined the file history, IP logs, embedded author data, and version stamps. What he found wasn't just incriminating, it was surgical. The map, the one showing my property as part of the shared community infrastructure, had been built using an old developer's blueprint from 15 years ago, back when the neighborhood was just bare dirt and zoning sketches. Someone had taken that raw, outdated layout and manually overlaid new parcel lines, reassigning my lot number and labeling it Recreational Use Zone A. The file creation logs, all traced back to a single IP address, the registered internet account, Karen L. Laughlin. Miles confirmed it 3 different ways. Same IP was used to email the file to the county zoning office. Same IP used to access the HOA cloud folder where the board documents were stored. Same IP used to upload photos of my pool, labeled amenity candidate in the image tags. Doug sat back in his chair, rubbing his jaw. She didn't just lie, he muttered. She engineered a fake reality. And she almost got away with it. We compiled everything into a formal complaint to the county DA's office, not just for document falsification, but for filing false instruments with a government agency and attempting to defraud through misuse of public records. That's a felony in California. At the same time, Doug filed a civil motion accusing the HOA of conspiracy, targeting not just the board, but Karen personally as the orchestrator of the fraud. I didn't tell anyone yet, not the press, not the neighbors, not even the Facebook group. I wanted it to land all at once like a meteor strike, but the walls were already cracking from the inside. One of the quieter board members, a guy named Eli, who always looked like he was one HOA meeting away from a nervous breakdown, showed up at my gate one morning. No clipboard, no Karen. Just his car, his sweat-stained polo, and a paper cup of gas station coffee. He didn't ask to come in, just stood there awkwardly and said, "Look, I didn't know. About the documents, the investor stuff. None of us did. It was all her I didn't answer. She told us it was handled, that we'd have legal title within weeks. She said your land was part of a pre-approved overlay zone, and we were just affirming it, like confirming a typo. We trusted her. He looked like he was waiting for me to punch him. Instead, I asked, 'You willing to testify?' He hesitated, then he nodded. That was when I knew we had her. The very next day, Miles found something else. The cherry on top. A set of community petition letters that had been sent to the zoning board weeks prior, all allegedly signed by local residents supporting HOA jurisdiction over my lot. But the files were editable PDFs, and their metadata showed every single one had been filled out from the same laptop within a single 2-hour window. Guess whose IP again? Karen's. She'd forged 23 names. Doug almost smiled. That's not just fraud. That's a perjury grenade. We added it to the complaint file. At this point, the DA's office was more than interested. They were actively building a criminal case. They even assigned an investigator to begin quietly interviewing HOA members. I kept my mouth shut, but inside, I was vibrating like a live wire. Because the next time Karen tried to twist the narrative, at a meeting, online, in front of a camera, I'd be ready. And this time, it wouldn't be about fences or pool access. It would be about handcuffs. Saturday morning felt off before I even opened my eyes. You ever wake up and feel like the air is wrong? Like the quiet outside is too staged? That was me. I hadn't even made it to the coffee maker when the motion alert pinged on my phone. Front gate. Movement detected. Multiple bodies. I pulled up the live feed and nearly spit on my screen. There they were. Karen, flanked by 6 HOA board members, all dressed in matching emerald green polos. They were unloading folding chairs, pop-up banners, PA equipment, and, I swear to God, a podium with a printed sign that read, Emerald Ridge Community Unity Assembly Open Session. Behind them stood about 20 residents, some curious, some clearly uncomfortable. And directly in front of my gate, someone was unrolling a red carpet runner over my driveway. I stepped outside, barefoot, in gym shorts, armed only with black coffee and rage. Karen saw me and beamed like she was introducing the president. "Jake, so glad you're home. We're just setting up for our emergency meeting." I stared at her, then at the carpet. "On my property. It's adjacent," she chirped. "Technically, this section is within the disputed access threshold." "Disputed?" I snapped. "The dispute is between reality and whatever delusion you're living in." Karen took the mic. Yes, the mic, and turned to address the crowd behind her. "This is a peaceful assembly, folks. a lawful gathering of concerned neighbors committed to restoring harmony and community access. A few people clapped. She continued, "Today, we reaffirm our position that the shared recreational facility behind this gate should serve the community it beautifies." That's when I saw it. One of the board members was trying to pick the gate lock. No subtlety. Just crouched over the latch with a small crowbar and something shiny in his hand. I stormed down the driveway, back away from the lock. Now Karen spoke into the mic again, trying to talk over me. "We understand there's been confusion, but we've submitted all necessary—" I cut her off. "You've submitted forged documents, fake petitions, and lied to the county. I have everything, every email, every IP address. You're not hosting a meeting, Karen. You're staging an invasion." The guy at the lock gave up and stood awkwardly. I turned to the crowd. "You all should leave, right now. Because in about 2 minutes, this driveway is going to be full of cops." I wasn't bluffing. I had already hit the panic button on my security app. It sent an emergency alert directly to the local sheriff's dispatcher, flagged with my pending litigation case file and active complaint number. As if on cue, sirens began to wail down the street. Karen tried to rally. "This is intimidation. He's threatening peaceful residents. Someone film this." People already were. At least 3 phones were pointed at her, and now at the 2 patrol cars pulling up behind the group. Deputies stepped out, hands resting on their belts, scanning the scene with that "why is this my life?" expression. One of them, Deputy Walsh, who knew me from the prior incident, walked straight toward Karen. "Ma'am," he said flatly, "you were explicitly advised 2 weeks ago not to return to this property." "We have that on record." Karen straightened. "I'm not on his property. We're on common use access space." Walsh raised an eyebrow. "According to the county, no such designation exists. And based on the court filings we've received, you are in direct violation of a pending civil motion. We're going to have to ask you to disperse." Immediately, she didn't move. Her jaw twitched. And then she did the most Karen thing I could have imagined. She lunged for the gate padlock and tried to rip it off. With both hands. On camera. In front of 20 witnesses. Walsh didn't hesitate. He moved in, grabbed her arms, and in less than 30 seconds, Karen Laughlin, queen of the Emerald Ridge HOA, was in handcuffs. As she was being led to the patrol car, still yelling about community rights and land reassignment, I turned to the group of stunned residents. "Anyone else want to host a meeting on my lawn?" No one answered. Doug showed up 10 minutes later, just in time to see the police cruiser drive off. He looked at me, at the folded chairs, the banners, the scattered flyers. Then at the podium, still standing like a monument to suburban madness. "Think that counts as self-incrimination?" he asked. "Oh yeah," I said, and it was live-streamed. That afternoon, the HOA Facebook group locked its comment section. The Community Unity Assembly post was deleted. Karen's name vanished from the board roster. The only thing left was the red carpet, rolled up, dirty, abandoned at the edge of my lawn like the last prop from a failed play. But I wasn't cleaning it up. Let it rot there, like the last shred of their fantasy. They say revenge is best served cold, but I prefer mine delivered by certified mail with a court seal on the envelope. It took just under 3 months for everything to come crashing down, slowly at first, then all at once. After Karen's arrest, the DA's office moved fast. Faster than I expected, honestly. Turns out, when you try to defraud investors, falsify public documents, and stage what's essentially a coup on private land, prosecutors take notice. The charges were stacked like a Jenga tower. Document falsification, filing false instruments, attempted real estate fraud, conspiracy, trespassing, and my personal favorite, knowingly misleading a government agency for personal or organizational gain. It sounded like a long way of saying Karen played HOA God and finally got smacked. At her arraignment, she pleaded not guilty, of course. But once Miles' forensic data was introduced, IP logs, document metadata, even the batch timestamps of her forged petitions, her own lawyer started looking for a deal. Meanwhile, Doug and I weren't sitting idle. Our civil suit moved forward, bolstered by sworn statements from multiple HOA board members, including Eli, who turned out to be more useful than anyone expected. He provided email chains, internal meeting notes, even a voice memo Karen left him where she outright said, "Once the pool's officially in, we'll have full legal precedent. Jake won't have a choice." When the judge heard that in open court, he laughed. In the final ruling, the HOA was found liable for intentional interference with private property, slander of title, malicious prosecution, and emotional distress. The damages, $400,000, paid directly to me. The HOA's insurance didn't cover intentional fraud, so the board was forced to liquidate assets, common funds, legal reserves, even a planned playground project, just to scrape together the payout. By the time the dust settled, Emerald Ridge HOA was formally dissolved under a court-supervised forfeiture order. As for Karen, she took a plea, 8 years, 2 of those without parole. The rest to be served under heavy restrictions, including a ban from serving on any HOA or residential board for life. Apparently, she's spending her time giving legal depositions in other fraud cases now. Not as a lawyer, of course, but as Exhibit A. Funny how things work out. After everything, I didn't throw a party. Well, not a public one. I hosted what I called the Barbecue of Vindication. I invited a select crowd, Doug, Miles, Eli, a couple reporters, and a handful of neighbors who'd stayed neutral or quietly supportive throughout the whole mess. Burgers, ribs, strong drinks, and not a single HOA rulebook in sight. The new addition to the yard, a tall black metal sign by the front gate, gold letters, simple, clear, impossible to ignore, private pool, HOA free zone. Trespassers will be charged and soaked. I also wrote an article Doug insisted. It's called How to Survive Suburban Tyranny, One Man's Guide to HOA Insanity. I submitted it to 3 real estate law blogs, 2 homeowner forums, and 1 libertarian magazine. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive, especially from people who'd had their own Karen-shaped nightmares. Now I sleep just fine. No more motion alerts, no more anonymous letters, just me, my pool, and the quiet hum of filtered freedom. Sometimes I still hear whispers in the neighborhood, rumors, that Karen's planning a comeback, maybe in another zip code, that someone's trying to resurrect the HOA under a new name. Let them try. I've got cameras, lawyers, and a 3-terabyte hard drive of receipts. And a pool no one's touching, not without a warrant or an invite.